thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce my colleagues from the PSS team,
we can introduce ourselves.
team, who will be presenting on today's topic. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Assisi Hospice. My name is Sandra. I'm a medical social worker from Assisi. With me today is my colleague Joyce. She's the clinical pastoral care manager from Mount Alvernia Hospital and Assisi Hospice. So now that we've introduced ourselves, right? You know us, right? We also want to know you. So don't worry, I'm not going to make y'all do anything obvious. Can I just get a show of hands? How many of y'all here are here as caregivers? Caregivers to your own loved ones. And then you can put up your hand. Huh? Formal, informal also can? Wow. Okay, then, so I want to tell you on behalf of the people that you're caring for, thank you for doing that for them. Okay, next. Volunteers. Wow, okay. Thank you for giving your gift of time and service to the patients. Any healthcare and social service staff? Yeah, okay. All our comrades in the healthcare, thank you for fighting on during COVID also. We also fight here with y'all. N95 mask by day, facial mask by night, right? Any religious leaders or people providing religious support? Thank you, thank you. I don't know whether people tell you that often. I don't know whether people tell you that often, but God bless you. Okay, and anybody else here? I would assume the rest of you are members of the public, but interested in knowing more about this. Okay, so regardless of what your position is, thank you for being here with us today, giving us a chance to share with you our knowledge, our precious experiences about learning about different cultures, different religions in Singapore, and how this impact our patients and their loved ones and on the decisions that they make. We'll also be sharing a bit more about some culturally and religiously appropriate practices which patients and their loved ones can undertake and how we can support them in these decisions also. So before we proceed further, I need to give you a disclaimer, okay? We are not religious leaders. We are not theologians. We are also not the topic experts. Okay, there are some of you inside there. So that's why, I asked you to lift up your hand, right? So later I know where to go to if there's Q&A. So the information that we are sharing today is based on articles from trainings from journals, consultation with different religious leaders in the community, and also shared experiences between us and our patients and their family members. These religious views and practices that we'll share about, it may vary from person to person, even within the same religion. Okay? So, but we are just people that are blessed with the chance to journey with our patients and their caregivers, so that it gives us a chance to learn about their religion and their culture, so it can help future patients and their families and counterparts like all of you here today. We hope that we would have presented all the information as accurately as possible. If there's anything that you need to clarify, or if let's say we have presented it wrongly and you want to share it out so to clarify for everybody, we can do that at the end. Okay? So now is the time that you can take out your phone again. Okay? If I can get you all to scan this QR code, or you can go to menti.com and type, they will ask you for a code. You can type in the code 1604. Okay, on this Mentimeter, it will be asking you about your views. Okay, before we share with you, I want to hear what are your views first. What is your views about culture and religion and how it plays a role in palliative care? Okay, then you can just type in your answer there. Okay, if you cannot scan the QR code, you can go to the website itself, menti.com. Either or. Okay, I'm going to switch to another site now. Okay, I already got some points in already. Okay, I'm just going to read it out. Someone said it's very important. is comfort for the dying, mental support, is of essential and utmost importance. What values to the patient and loved ones matters. Important to find out what matters to them. It's personal. It can be very challenging, true. It has an influence on the choice of care for the patients and the perspective of the caregivers. Gives the person who has palliative needs the sense of coherence. It's a critical part of the dying process, very true. We need to respect one's beliefs and religious orientation of the dying, even if it is not your own or against your own. Remember I said just now, some religions you can have, within the same religion you can have conflicting views also. It gives peace. It also is also essential to help anchor the family and their decisions, especially when they are the ones who have to make the decision when the patients cannot make the decisions anymore. It helps patients find meaning and hope and strength from a higher power when facing their illnesses. Spiritual care also. Yes, there are sensitive issues to be mindful of also, which we will try to share with you some of our struggles and how we've tried to manage it. Okay, I'm just going to be scrolling down. Okay, different races, even different races have different perspective about palliative care. Yes, very true. Very important at the last phase, better coping at EOL, which means end of life, compared to a free thinker. We'll share about that also later. Okay, I will swap back to our main slides for today. So in year 2002, Assisi served a total of 2,474 patients. And here is a breakdown of these patients by their religion. So in order of most served by religion, we have Buddhists makes up the most with 40%, Christians 20%, Muslims 9%, Catholics 8%, others 7%, Taoists and free thinkers are tied at 6%, and Hindus 4%. Okay. So I'm sure some of us have encountered patients that make certain decisions that make us go, why this kind of decision don't make sense to me? Okay, so for today's learning objectives, we hope to help everybody obtain a better understanding of what one's religion and culture teaches about sickness and dying, and how it influences their decision making. We also share about some cultural practices and its impact, and how one can be culturally sensitive, even in an inpatient setting. So I hope from today's sharing, it can help some of us understand why some of our patients make certain decisions or have certain practices. The religions we'll be focusing on today would be Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Catholics, and free thinkers. We will also be sharing about some last rite practices and also share about the types of burials available in Singapore. Let's start with Buddhism and its views on sickness and dying. If I'm going too fast, because I'm very nervous, please slow me down, okay? Okay, in Buddhism, it is believed that death is part of life. It's part of the process of life. So Buddhism teaches that all will pass away as part of the natural process of life, which is birth, aging, sickness, and death. In Chinese, this is known as 生老病死. Okay, this one might sound more familiar to you all. So practicing mindfulness and meditation is also highly encouraged because it helps the person have a deeper understanding of, a deeper appreciation of impermanence or the state of lasting for only a period of time. In Buddhist teachings, it is a belief that it's good to practice mindfulness to reflect on the meaning of life in their daily lives. Buddhism also teaches about karma and rebirth. Karma is a Sanskrit term that means action or doing. So when you talk about karma and rebirth, simply put, it means if one does wholesome action, they'll be inclined to have a good rebirth. If one does unwholesome action, then they'll be inclined to have an unwholesome rebirth. In Buddhism, it's taught that it's okay to medicate for pain because this helps remove distraction from any discomfort so that they can remain comfortable and be able to focus on positive thoughts and focus on their meditation. But some may experience drowsiness from the medication, and because some of them prefer to stay alert even towards the terminal phase so that they can concentrate on their religious practices such as their meditation and mindfulness and chanting in order to have a good reincarnation. So I had a patient before. She was a very staunch Buddhist, but she was in a lot of pain. She really needed the painkillers. But her family was not keen for her to have the painkillers because they wanted her. They were saying, oh, the painkillers will make her less alert, drowsy, and they wanted her to stay alert so that she can continue to do her chanting. So how do we decide what is best? Ask the patient what do they want. Okay. So, but the thing is, while asking them, right, we want to ask her what she wants because we want to respect her view. But as healthcare professionals, I have the duty to make sure that my patient has as much information as possible so she can make an informed decision. So, so one of that will be telling her that, you know, not everybody gets drowsy from all the painkillers that we give. And it varies from person to person. For example, a medicine like Panadol. Some people can take Panadol, no problem. I can take one Panadol, I get sleepy within the hour. Does that mean Panadol is no good? No. It just has different effects on people. And another thing is also, at the end of life, because of how the disease is affecting the body, the patients will get drowsy with or without medication. So it's not that you don't take medication means you stay alert. So that is something that we have to make known to them so that they can make the decision. So I just ask the patient, what's important to you? Is it pain control, which may or may not make you alert or less alert, or your chanting, where you need to remain clear-headed and focused on the chanting? So for my patient, she placed pain control as a priority. Okay, so her family was there, they heard it for themselves, and they also wanted to respect her wishes. So what happened from then on? The patient accepted the painkillers, and the family took over the chanting for her. They would be there in the room, they were chanting for her. Okay. So that is something that worked out in that way. Okay. In Buddhism, euthanasia and suicide is not permissible because they believe that every life is precious and no killing is allowed. During an illness, it is important to take care of a dying person's mind, to generate the right state of mind so that they can find their way into a higher state of rebirth as they live their present lives. These are some ways of how the patients and all their loved ones can help when somebody is dying. They can read the Buddhist Dharma because this helps the patient stay focused, helps them stay focused on a positive state of mind. They can also do chanting or prayers or reciting Amitabha or reciting mantras, whether it's by the patient or the family or spiritual friends. Sometimes there are players like these, which you can buy online or you can buy from the Buddhist resource shops or the bookshops. So it plays, it's battery operated, it will play as long as you turn it on. So it sounds something like this. Okay? Either that or now it's very modern, right? There's YouTube. So you can go online, search for Amitabha non-stop or Amitabha playlist. It will play for, the playlist I've seen, it will last for 1 hour to 2 hours. So as long as you have data, you can have Wi-Fi, you can continue playing. So meditation is not about cursing a person to die. It can also be, meditation is mainly to help the person focus on the meditation and what it will bring. And it can also be praying for recovery. Okay. And it also helps them, meditation also helps them focus on making these thoughts, these positive thoughts, making it their last thoughts before they pass on. You can also place images of Buddha in the line of vision of the patient to help them with their focus. Okay. But may I please request, if it is in a healthcare institution, be mindful that it doesn't get in the way of how the staff or volunteers provide care for the patient. I had a patient once before, the family wanted, okay, the patient can only lie down flat. So the family wanted to put the picture of Buddha in their line of vision. So imagine you're in a hospital, you look up, what do you see? Ceiling fan, correct. So they wanted to paste the picture there, or they wanted to hang the picture of Buddha on the ceiling fan. So this is where I need to be culturally sensitive. So I had to tell them, I want to respect your wishes, but I cannot have a flying Buddha in the room. That is a safety hazard. It's not just a religion, it's a safety hazard. I don't want somebody else to get some revelation when they cannot hit by the poster. Okay? So I had to tell the family members that. So, and they didn't want, because on the sides you have walls, right? So, and they didn't want the pictures to be there because they said the patient must turn this way, they can see. Okay, so we compromised. We borrowed an easel from the art therapist. We put the poster of Buddha there. We put it right next to the patient, but with a terms and conditions to the family that when the healthcare staff or volunteers come in, we can move this easel to the side. Do whatever we need. When it's done, we'll move the easel back. Okay, so this was in a way a win-win situation, but at least I don't have the poster flying up there. Okay, so another tip is also to make the place as serene and calming as possible. So arguing in front of the patient is highly discouraged. Okay, so pro tip, if you have a patient with family members, they are always arguing. I'm sure you all have had such, right? We've always kena those kind, hello, family members are arguing, can social worker come down now? So because in Buddhist, they are told, cannot argue, right? Don't argue, right? Why they're told not to argue is because that will cause the person to be distracted, to become angry. So usually we'll tell them, don't argue here. If you need to, go out of the room. Or go out of the hospice. Go and have your whatever discussion, just don't have this argument or heated discussion in front of the patient. Okay. Avoid objects, persons, or conversations, like arguments, that will cause attachment and anger to arise. So because Buddhists are encouraged to let go of everything in their quest to achieve nirvana, crying in Buddhism, crying in front of the patient is also discouraged. They're also not encouraged to call the person's name because it will cause the patient to be unable to let go. You can, but I would say we don't tell them you cannot cry. If they need to cry, ask them to step out of the room for a while. When they're more settled, they can come back in. Allay the dying person's worries. Listen to them, offer comforting words to calm their minds and hearts. Encourage them not to worry too much about their loved ones. Encourage the family to provide regular reassurance about their worries. And some of them at that stage, they may be forgetful. They may keep asking them. So we tell the family, it's okay, you just keep reminding them, okay, this is settled, we'll take care of so and all that. Okay. Family can also dedicate merits, good merits on behalf of their loved ones for good karma. For example, doing charitable acts, doing donations in the patient's name. Okay. You can, yeah. Before and at the moment of death, and for a period after death, monks, nuns, or spiritual friends, they may read prayers and chants from the Buddhist scriptures. Okay, during these prayers, terminally ill or gravely ill patients are encouraged to let go of all attachments to family members, to relatives, to friends, and all worldly possessions. Buddhists believe that this can actively assist and bring relief to the dying person. Remember the slide before I was saying they are encouraged to let go of these worries, of these things. Okay? So in Buddhist tradition, this is called either deathbed chanting or end-of-life chanting. It's regarded as something very important, and it's ideally the last thing that the Buddhist patient hears. This chanting should continue even after a patient passes away during the chanting. Before I move on to the next slide, okay, I must say that this chanting is not universally practiced amongst all Buddhists. Okay, it varies. The practice varies from the different groups of Buddhism. So some Buddhists practice chanting after a person has passed on. During this chanting, which we can't find an actual term for it, but down here we call it the 8 hours no touch. Because during this chanting, which lasts 8 hours from the point of death, no one is allowed to touch the body. Okay? Because it is believed it will cause the spirit pain or become angry. So this will result in confusion for the spirit, and it will more likely to be reborn in the lower realms. Why 8 hours? Why not 3 hours? Why not 5 hours? Why 8 hours? Because some Buddhists believe that the conscious is still present, even though certified clinically dead. And some believe that it will take 3 to 8 hours for the spirit to depart from the body. So even if you go by that, sorry. Sorry. So even after 8 hours, right, it's still very important to touch the body, manage the body gently, so as to not anger the spirit. So this is important when staff or volunteers or caregivers are helping out, to be very gentle when you're doing it. Some may also place a sacred or blessed Dharma pill into the mouth of the dying patient to ensure a smooth journey into their mouth. The ones that I've seen before are either a peanut-sized one or a popcorn-sized one. So some of them may want to put it inside the mouth and then they let it dissolve and it goes into the body system. But this is something that needs to be approached with sensitivity. Because if a person is, this one is put in only when the person has a few hours or very short time left. So I had a patient, okay, if you imagine, if you put it into your mouth and it dissolves, but the person cannot swallow, and they're lying there, there will be a very high chance of choking or aspiration, because you imagine yourself, you lie there, you don't swallow, it will cause choking. And this pill is supposed to dissolve upon contact with any kind of water, so even saliva. But if they are at end of life, they probably have very dry mouths, they're not drinking, then the whole thing will stay there. It's really very hard. So you put it inside your mouth there, imagine you lie down there with something there will be that sensation of choking. So you explain to the family members, ask them to put themselves in the patient's shoes. How would you feel? I can see you're frowning already. So you are also imagining how uncomfortable it can be, right? So usually we'll explain it to the family members, the discomfort and all that. Let them know of your concerns, but also let them know that you acknowledge this is very important to them. So if by the theory of not touching, right, so it actually technically also means that the doctors are not allowed to certify death, because that is touching. Okay. But from our checks with different Buddhist leaders, it's actually permissible to certify for death before the chanting begins. Because, and what we will tell the family members, because this includes very minimal touching, it's only using the stethoscope to listen for lung and heart sounds for 1 minute, and we're only checking the eyelid, opening up the eyelid to check your pupil for dilation. All this takes less than 3 minutes, and we only touch these two places. We will also not touch the sole of the feet, especially, because that is sort of like cursing them to hell. So we'll tell family, these are the only places we'll touch, and where we'll absolutely not touch. So by most families, when they get this reassurance from us, they're okay. And also because, based on Singapore laws, death has to be certified once death occurs. So occasionally we still have family members that will say, no, cannot touch. We have patients before that lock the door, don't tell us. But we'll tell them, no, we have to certify. And they'll say, ask your doctor to come in after we are done. Then we'll tell them, again, we'll emphasize that is the law. 2, we'll tell them, if my doctor comes in after 8 hours to certify, the time on the death cert will be 8 hours later. So a lot of them, when they hear this, they're very not comfortable. Although we've told them before, we've tried before, we said, then when you're doing prayers, you minus 8 hours lah. Or no, when you're doing your legal stuff and all, you minus 8 hours lah. So a lot of them get that this part, and they are most of them so far. Actually, I haven't had any that didn't allow certification before lah. Okay, but again, an emphasis: not all Buddhists practice this. Okay, next we'll discuss about Taoism. Okay. Taoism believes in going with the flow. Okay. They believe that a person that falls ill because of the imbalance between yin and yang, the qi, and the 5 elements of one's body, which is wood, fire, metal, earth, and water. I'm sure most of us have seen talismans before, right? The yellow one with the words painted, hand brushed onto it. Okay, that is part of the practice also. Talismans are written to ward off illness, cure illness and ward off evil. This talisman is burnt, is mixed into water, is consumed, or is written onto the body. In the past, the talismans, right, the ink is mixed with herbs, and is meant to have a curative effect. But nowadays, ink is made out of chemicals. So that's something you need to tell them also lah. Let them own self think lah. Okay. So, but Taoists are taught to accept all events, including sickness and death, as part of life. And when one's time is up, one should let go, and find peace in the way of Tao. What's considered a good death to Taoists? When the patient gets to tell their loved ones their final wishes and to live without regrets. When they get to forgive all their enemies and to live without grudges. When they get to seek repentance of their sins to avoid suffering in hell. Since there's a good death, there's also a not good death, right? So what's considered a bad death? A bad death is considered when the person is below 40 years old. So what's important to Taoists of all ages? Okay. Repentance and confession is very important in Taoism. The 7-month prayers are also important. It's important for the living to reflect on their actions and take any reparative actions if they need to, and for the dead to be pardoned of their sins. Charity work is also very important in Taoism. Generally, a Taoist does not entertain much thoughts about spirituality. The main focus will be settling all earthly affairs. So majority of Chinese in Singapore practice a mixture of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. So sometimes you may see practices from the different religions all being practiced at the same time. When a person dies, at home, all the religious altars and all mirrors are supposed to be covered with red paper. Mirrors are supposed to be covered because it's believed that if a person sees the reflection of a coffee in the mirror, it will bring bad luck to that person who has seen that reflection. And for all altars, it's supposed to be covered with red paper because it's supposed to block the deity's view from seeing the death. In our inpatient wards, there is a sink with a mirror there. Okay. So we had one patient before who died, and then the family members took our bed sheets and our blanket on, and they covered the mirror in the room. So what did we do about it? Nothing lah. Because they were waiting for the undertaker, so they still covered. We didn't do anything because one, it doesn't cause harm to my patient. It doesn't cause any inconvenience to our staff. It's just a mirror. We just left it because we know this will bring comfort to the family. And it's also for, when they were doing it, it's also for blessings for us. So we don't see the reflection of the patient there. So they are also being considerate to us. So we just left it. If it's okay, we can go ahead to do it. Okay. In Taoism, loved ones are encouraged to call the name of the deceased and to cry as loud as possible. Okay. Because this is in hopes that they'll be resurrected, and it's a sign of respect and filial piety to the deceased. So, right, this is very different from Buddhism, right? It's the total opposite of Buddhism, right? Okay. So in Singapore, Buddhist and Taoist practices tend to cross over. So that's why sometimes, this is just one example of how they can family members can get very confused. In Taoists will also tell their loved ones to follow God and their ancestors onto a better place. Timing-wise, if they pass on after 11 p.m., the next day is considered their date of death. So like for example, today is 23rd March, right? So if a patient passes away at 11:15 p.m., their date of death is actually 24th March because the Taoist clock stops at 11 p.m., not 12 midnight. Okay. Then if a Taoist passes away in the wee hours of the day, that is considered a good death because that means that the patient has blessed 3 meals for their family members. If the patient passes away in the morning, they will have left 2 meals for the family. If they pass away in the afternoon, they will have left 1 meal for the family. But it's okay, it's not taboo. The priest can ask for the meals back. I had that reaction too when I heard it. I'm like, okay, never mind, I'll just accept it. This part I learned from a Taoist priest. Yeah. And I saw a family member, 时间很好很好. Okay. But so now if you encounter this, right, you have a bit of an idea, right? And it's 11 p.m., not 12 midnight. So terminal discharge or compassionate discharge is when we discharge a patient for the patient to go home and die. Okay. So if there are such discharges, the males must pass away in the living room. Females must pass away in their own room. Okay. But for both, either gender, they are not allowed to pass away on their own bed because they believe that the soul will be trapped in their own bed and they cannot move on. Okay. This piece of clothing here, that's called the shou-yi. It's a traditional funeral attire worn by the deceased. So the undertakers can help the patients wear it. Sometimes families may ask the staff to help the patient wear it when doing the last office, but it is rarely used nowadays. Some of you may have noticed at Taoist funerals a pearl placed on the deceased mouth or on the lips. This is to ensure a smooth journey through hell and is believed to have the ability to protect the deceased in their journey. But nowadays the pearl is replaced. It's either replaced by a coin or a grain of rice. The coin is used to pay the guardian spirits in the afterlife so that they have a smooth passage. And this coin may also be placed either in the lip or in the left hand. The grain of rice will ensure that the departed has enough to eat on their journey. Next, we'll go on to Hinduism. Okay, accepting illness and death is part of the Hindu philosophy. Okay. So artificially prolonging life with means such as CPR, mechanical ventilation, nasogastric tube, which is what this NGT stands for, or very aggressive intervention is viewed as interfering with karma and against traditional Hindu thinking. Death is not viewed as something taboo in the Hindu faith. Rather, it is seen as a blessing when one knows they are dying because they will have time to make the necessary preparations. For Hindus, they have a preference to pass on in their own homes, if able to. Okay. When they rest in their rooms, their head should be facing east and the lighted lamp should be placed near their heads. Family is encouraged to keep vigil with them, to sing hymns, prayers, and read the scriptures. If the person is unconscious or unable to respond, family members can chant the mantra softly into their right ear. Why the right ear? Because the right ear is considered clean. Okay. Holy ash or sandal paste is applied to the forehead, verses are chanted, and a few drops of milk or holy water that's blessed from the temple or from the Ganges river is trickled into the mouth of the person. Okay. It's important to understand these rites and to be culturally sensitive, whichever setting you're in, whether it's in a home or whether they are in a healthcare institution, because it may cause the caregivers to live with guilt if they are unable to meet these obligations for their loved ones. And, but this, again, just like the Chinese religions, these religions will differ from person to person. When death occurs, the body is brought home and is laid on the cot or on the floor with their head facing south. Just now that one is head facing east, right? Now head faces south. Okay, because this reflects returning to the lap of Mother Earth. Incense is burnt and a lamp is kept near them and is kept lit at all times. In Hinduism, once the death occurs, there is no more purpose for the body because they feel because the spirit will have moved on to their next form. So therefore, that's why cremation for Hindus is done within the day or within 24 hours from death. Okay, it has to be done within this time frame so that it doesn't hinder the soul from moving on to their next form or reincarnation. Okay. For children and infants, traditionally they are buried because they don't have an attachment to the physical body. But nowadays, cremation for children is also acceptable. Traditionally, female family members and friends they don't attend the cremation. They are also not allowed at the collection or the immersion of the ashes, unless the females are the only next of kin left. But these rituals that are done at the memorials are especially important for the family members to help them with their bereavement. So it's usually a communal event. So family, friends and all that, they will come by, they will help with the coordination, they help with the cooking for the food that is given to the people that come for the prayers. So the cremated remains are usually are buried in the sea for sea burial, and followed by memorials on these few days, like on the 3rd day, 5th day, 7th day, 9th day, 13th and 31st day, and as well as the first year. On the 8th day, they usually offer the deceased favorite food, and on the 15th day, they do night prayers. Okay. Again, different practices amongst different family members. Okay, we now look at Islam. Sorry, I'm keeping time. A believer of Islam has a few obligations to fulfill, such as the ones listed here. Okay, they are also obligated to look after their body and their mind. So therefore, trying to maintain good health is very important. It's very essential to the Muslim person. However, when they're struck by illness or injury, it is vital for them to follow God's guidance and God's plans. So a Muslim believer must seek medical help and do everything they can to bring about a cure or recovery. But at the same time, they are also reminded to seek help through prayer, remembrance of God, and acts of worship. Islam is a holistic way of life, so they believe that physical and spiritual health go hand in hand. So how do they view illness? How do they make meaning of when they are struck down with an illness? So they see as when a person is in pain or suffering, either they are a good person and their place in Jannah or heaven is elevated, or if they are a sinner, they will get forgiveness through going through this illness journey. One of the sayings or hadith of Prophet Muhammad says, work for this life as if we are living forever, and work for the later life as if we are dying tomorrow. So in this, Muslims are encouraged to reflect and think about life and death frequently. They're also encouraged to prepare a will. So in working for this life, a believer is encouraged to go see the doctor for treatment of sicknesses, injuries, and disease. The Muslim believer is also allowed to go and seek a diagnosis and a cure for disease of the mind or emotional conditions. So it is okay for them to go and look for psychiatrists or psychologists, or even go for counseling. Okay. However, there are some small restrictions in what treatments they can seek, including a cure that cannot be including a cure that is forbidden, something that is forbidden, for example, alcohol. If the treatment involves alcohol, they are not allowed to undertake this, or they cannot buy things, like you cannot buy organs for organ transplant, because that will cause harm to the person who's having his organs removed from him. Okay. So, they are also not allowed to go and look for bomos or soothsayers. Okay. Because ultimately, Allah does not put healing into something that He has prohibited. Okay. But even after seeking all this medical information and they still do not get well, Muslims accept it as part of Allah's will. So with regards to euthanasia or suicide, it is not permissible because Muslims believe that it's Allah who gives and takes away life. No humans can take or give it, because they believe each life is sacred because it is given by Allah. And it's Allah who chooses how long each person will live. No human should interfere in it. So here are some points that will be helpful for us to understand when we are supporting our Muslim patients and family members. So if the patient is a female, they will usually cover themselves up, except for the hands and the face. For males, they will cover themselves at least from the waist to the knee. There's a preference for the same gender doctor to treat them. So if your male patient says, I don't want a female doctor, don't take any offense. It's just they will prefer somebody of the same gender. Okay? Medical staff should always ask for permission before we do anything. And during treatment, they do prefer to have a family member nearby. So approach this with sensitivity if we can have the family member around. Okay? And patients do hope that they can fulfill their obligations, for example, the 5 prayers a day, and to go for Hajj if possible. For family members and friends, it's highly encouraged to visit, but we will suggest to them, keep your visits short because the patient will be very tired. Visitors are also encouraged to pray for recovery and health, and to remind the patient to have patience. Okay. Say a good thing about the patient when you're there, because they believe there are angels there to pray for the patient. Okay. The patient or the visitors can also recite the Quran, okay? And because this is a source of comfort. For those who are very ill but still able to respond, encourage them to recite the declaration to immerse in the remembrance of their God Almighty. If they are unable to say it, then family members can do it for them. We will encourage them to recite the Quran into their ear, so that it is the last thing that they hear before they pass on. This is in line with the Islamic hadith that says, the person who dies having made the declaration of faith will no doubt enter paradise. Okay, so this is what we usually do to them. We share with family members that come to visit my Muslim patient. We'll tell them they can't respond right now and all that. Then they'll ask, what can I do? We can tell them, you can recite the Quran for them. Recite it into their ears. Okay, next. Okay, so in Islam, is organ transplants allowed? Okay. So yes, organ transplants are allowed because organ transplants are performed to replace non-functional or diseased organs in order for a cure. Remember, that's what they're supposed to be seeking, right, for a cure. So this medical procedure, like all other medical procedures, is permissible in Islam because it's considered as seeking treatment for a medical condition, for good health. Okay. How about, so I can take organs. Can I donate organs? Can. Because, so it is allowed in Islam because it's considered a priceless gift from the donor to the person who is suffering in pain from organ failure. So such a donation will not only help that patient, it will also help save their life. So a previous slide that I shared was saying, oh, you cannot buy organs and all that. So this is different. This one is, so you cannot buy from a living person because that person will have to go through unnecessary surgery to take out the organ to give it to you. But in this case, if the person has passed on and their organs can allow somebody else to continue living well, it is permissible. This is, however, dependent on the deceased consent or their next of kin or religious leader if there is no next of kin. Okay, so the person must have given consent. How about DNR? DNR stands for do not resuscitate. Okay, this is when the person states that they do not want to be resuscitated in an emergency, such as CPR, intubation, and all. Okay, so this is also allowed. Okay, in the situation where further treatment is futile, okay, that means there is any other treatment is of no help to help treat the condition already, it is allowed. A DNR order can be passed over the patient, either with the patient's consent or with their immediate family member's consent. And it's also permissible for the patient to make a will to say that they want to withdraw from all this treatment. When a Muslim is passing on or has passed on, other Muslims who know the deceased would join in prayers and recite verses from the Quran. The declaration of faith, or also known as Shahada, is said, and if the person is still able to respond, it is encouraged for them to respond with, I bear witness that there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. Okay. So non-Muslim staff, we should ask for permission to touch the body, wear gloves. Okay. And then the body must be kept covered. Post-mortems are not preferred for Muslims. So the process for Islam burial is as follows. So the deceased must be given a bath as prescribed within Islamic laws. Male deceased should be bathed by males, females by females. So this bathing would be done by people who know the rules regarding it. After the bath, the deceased is shrouded. A male is wrapped in 3 pieces of cloth and females in 5. Okay. The deceased body will then be raised and carried to the place where the funeral will take place. When they carry the body there are also different ways of carrying it, depending on the age of the person. Upon reaching the place for burial, the funeral prayers are offered upon the deceased. In Singapore, the only place for burial is the Choa Chu Kang Muslim Cemetery. So burial is usually done within 24 hours during the daytime. Okay, non-Muslims can attend the funeral. Traditionally, women don't attend the burials, but nowadays, with modern times, females can attend. The body is buried in a southwest direction facing Mecca. Okay, and it's preferred for the body to be buried at the country where they pass on. Usually not preferred for the body. So let's say a Singaporean has passed away in, for example, Indonesia. The usual preferred is that they will be buried in Indonesia and not brought back to Singapore because embalming is required. That is required by NEA laws. It must be embalmed, and it costs money. So just now, remember I said they don't prefer post-mortems, right? Embalming is also considered something like post-mortem because they believe, and Muslims believe in physical resurrection on the day of judgment. That's why cremation is not allowed in Islam. For next, we are going to talk about Christian views, and I'll hand this time over to Joyce.
Thank you, Sandra. So now we look at the Christian faith and what's important during end-of-life care. In case we may not be familiar with Christianity, often you hear somebody introducing themselves as, I'm a Roman Catholic, or I am Methodist, I'm Anglican, or I'm not a Roman Catholic, I'm a Christian. Actually, Christianity is the umbrella encompassing two broad groups. You have the Roman Catholics and then the Protestants. So when somebody says she's an Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, or I belong to independent church like New Creation Church, all that falls under the Protestants category, okay? And according to the recent census, about 37% of Christians are Roman Catholics. The rest belongs to the Protestant groups. So for this presentation, I will highlight the fundamental Christian views on sickness, death, and dying, and practical approach to caring for Christians nearing end of life, specifying difference between care for Roman Catholics and Protestant Christians. So we begin with Christian views on sickness and dying. Christians believe in the resurrection of the dead. There is afterlife, and also everlasting communion with God, i.e. Christians will be with God for eternity. A good death is part of the process. Death is not something to be feared, as a Christian view that the physical body is temporary and death is part of the earthly journey. By God's grace, a Christian's life is lived by faith because of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. As Jesus Christ performed miracles and healed the sick while he was on earth, it is not uncommon for our Christian patients to say, I'll hold on to the possibility of miraculous healing. I will pray for miracles, although ultimately Christians surrender to God's will. Next, Christians believe that life is a sacred gift from God, and as such do not allow assisted suicide or euthanasia. Use of analgesia and sedation to relieve terminal suffering is accepted, provided it does not consciously take away a person's life. There is no Christian objection to organ donation, and this can be viewed as an act of love and sacrifice following Jesus' example. And there is no religious objection to post-mortem. In general, Christians believe that what happens to their body before or after death will not affect their relationship with God, which is ultimately the most important for a Christian. So how does the Christian faith help one who is dying? Christian believes that God loves them. Jesus suffered and died in humanity's place, thus making possible the forgiveness of sins. Christians approach death with confidence of God's promise of resurrection after death and the hope of heaven. And this hope of heaven can be a source of spiritual strength for a Christian. You know, we now have with us a patient who came to us with lots of social problems. You know, there are a lot of things that are unsettled in her house, lots of estrangement in the relationships, and yet when she was told she only had 3 months to live, she decided, you know, everything else doesn't matter. I can swallow my pride, I can ask for forgiveness, I can reconcile with anybody, I can say sorry, I can say thank you, and all the unsettled things in my house, you know, all the things I've accumulated that I worried so much about, I can let go, because something awaits me that's far more important, which is the hope of heaven. Christians also believe that Jesus' death by crucifixion is a model of a good death, whereby he showed acceptance to death combined with compassion and forgiveness for those who wronged him. Jesus' death was also one full of suffering. Now, Christians believe that Jesus suffered emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So when the dying process is difficult, Christians can be comforted that they worship a God who can relate and they are not alone. Hence, God's peace and comfort, assurance and forgiveness of sins, and confidence of heaven are the focus of Christians' journey towards the end of life. So here we have the end of life. What are the end of life practices that are important? And here I will highlight the differences between how a Roman Catholic practices his or her faith compared to Christians of other denominations. Let me take you through first the Roman Catholic faith. So we'll focus on the left side of the slide. There are important sacraments or religious rituals for a Roman Catholic approaching end of life. Firstly, the Eucharist or the Holy Communion. This is an important aspect for Roman Catholics. The bread and wine taken becomes the body and blood of Jesus Christ. Catholics believe that as they receive the Holy Communion, they receive Jesus. This can be received daily and does not require a priest to administer, but the person giving has to be Roman Catholic. In Assisi Hospice, all our inpatient receives daily Holy Communion. If they can no longer swallow, they have the spiritual communion. And we're blessed to have some of our volunteers here who actually serve as communion ministers for our inpatients. Secondly, we have the sacrament of reconciliation or confession. The sacrament of confession requires a priest to perform and is administered upon a person's request. As one's sins are forgiven and reconciled with God, they usually result in a sense of peace and serenity of conscience. Next, anointing of the sick. This too requires a priest to perform. This is a sacrament to strengthen spiritually one who is ill and can be received by all baptized Catholics when ill, during old age, or when one is dying. And anointing is done with blessed oil. And finally, the Viaticum. Viaticum is when the Eucharist, the Holy Communion, is offered to those who are about to depart from this life. And this is considered the food for the journey. Normally, the sacrament of reconciliation and anointing of the sick is usually celebrated before the Viaticum. And as with confession and anointing, Viaticum requires a priest. So these forms the last rites for Roman Catholics approaching end of life. We now look at the practices of other Christian denominations. So we look at the right side of the table. For Protestants generally, what is important are the spiritual practices and not so much the sacraments. And we also need to recognize that with the different groups of denominations in Christianity, there are some theologically grounded variations that may influence end-of-life decisions. Hence, it is always crucial to check with what is their preferred practices. But listed here are the common practices. Christians liked Bible verses to be recited to them as a source of comfort. Reading portions of the Bible. Psalms 23 is always comforting for our patients or someone who's seriously ill because they're reminded that God is their good shepherd and there's nothing for them to fear. Listening to Christian music, hymns, listening to sermons. Today we have podcasts, we have sermons in podcasts, and I think during the COVID time, a blessing is the Christian services are often recorded, so our Christian patients can actually have attend the online services of their own church services. Prayer, they pray for assurance of faith. They pray for the family members, pray for things that they can no longer do. They surrender them to God. And also the Holy Communion. These practices apply to Roman Catholics as well, but like I said earlier, in addition, for Catholics, patients may desire the sacraments that I mentioned earlier. So what happened upon death? For Christians, Christians expect their bodies to be treated with respect. Although, as mentioned earlier, post-mortem and organ donations are allowed. Bodies may be buried or cremated. And noteworthy for Catholics, there's no scattering of cremated remains on the sea, air, or ground. That's not practiced. The point being the resurrected body to remain whole. There's no time scale within when the funeral service must be held. For Catholics, we call them funeral mass, and Christians are generally called funeral services. Funeral typically involve reading from the scriptures, hymns, often the deceased's favorite hymns, eulogies. Funeral is also a celebration of a Christian's life with thankfulness for the person's faith and membership of God's family. So sometimes a Christian funeral mass, funeral wake can be seen as a celebration. It's a celebration. So we have looked at the major religions in Singapore. So what about for those who call themselves free thinkers, right? In Singapore context, free thinker can mean different things for different ones. For some, free thinker means, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, I don't have any religious conformity. For others, it may simply mean that they are free and open to practice all faith. I had a few families who told me before, oh, we are free thinkers. That means we are free to think and practice everything, a bit of everything. You can pray, you can whatever, I welcome everybody. Okay, all right. So free thinkers does not always mean that they don't believe in a higher being. It may simply mean they don't identify with one particular faith, God, religion, philosophy, or they may even had at one point in their life some negative religious experiences, so they don't wish to be engaged in religion at that moment. Okay, I had people who tell me that they, were aspiring priests or aspiring pastors, but now they don't even talk to God about God with them. So how do we attend to free thinkers? Do they have spiritual needs approaching end of life, even if they may not be anchored in particular faith? The answer is a strong yes. Regardless of whether one has religion or not, people are still faced with the same existential questions around meaning and purpose. They have values, morality, love, hope, dreams they wish to explore during end of life. So understanding what gives one meaning and purpose in life can help us attend to a free thinker's spiritual needs. And generally, people have two broad paths to meaning or purpose in life. They may find meaning in their work and things that they have done. We call that the external world of perhaps achievement. One may say, I rose from rag to riches, by sheer hard work and determination. That has been my purpose in my entire life. Or, secondly, when one make meaning, they may say, wow, I had a meaningful life. I'm surrounded by my family, I have many good friends, I have lived a very meaningful life, and I am ready to go, I am contented. And for many people, their life contains a mixture of these two. So as they approach end of life, a free thinker may want to talk about things related to how they make meaning of their life. They may want to talk about their fears of dying and the regrets they have because of the lack of time. They may want to review their lives and take stock of them, perhaps talking about what they had done in the external world of work and action, as well as the relationships they have enjoyed, the internal world. They may want to settle their affairs and leave as few loose ends as possible, and exercise control as long as they possibly could. There may be no direct answers to their questions, but sometimes the intentional process of listing and identifying these topics, what are important, what are meaningful to them, can provide its own answer. So, how do we attend to a free thinker? How do we attend to meet these needs? We can relate to everyday experiences and speak with words that they are comfortable with. Avoid using religious terms that are meaningful only to a particular religious community. If we're not careful, religious expressions offered for comfort for the religious may also cause the non-religious to feel upset. Example, if you encourage somebody, think about heaven, or we talk about karma. Remember, some free thinkers may have unpleasant experiences within the religion context before. We can spend time listening to particular concerns or life stories. People often find value in being listened to attentively and empathically, and gentle encouragement can help them to articulate any concerns they may have. We can identify values, strengths, hopes, and fear that they reveal, identifying, wow, you really love your family, or you have been such a hardworking and honest man, can bring much encouragement that they had lived a purposeful life. Or just providing a listening ear as they may want to talk about their fears of dying or the regrets for their lack of time. We can explore a person's personhood and acknowledge. In our inpatients, we put up an inpatient personhood board, by the bedside, where what's important to the patient, what they enjoy, what matters to them is listed down. So if somebody says, I enjoy traveling, I enjoy adventures, get them to share about where they've been to and the meaningful experiences they had. Or if somebody said, I have lived a quiet life, or I just want a quiet life surrounded by books, maybe you can get them to share their reflections about life. Essentially, think about how we can provide that space for patient or our loved ones to arrive at his or her own self-reassurance that the life that is coming to an end has meaning, validity, and value. Whether one has religion, belief, faith, or not, the most important part we can play to support anyone in the end of life is to be present and to listen. Deep listening is more than enough. It creates a container for the person to do the work he needs to do. Deep listening is your healing work. Intuition will lead you into deep listening. If you're listening deeply, you will know what you need to say, to do. There is nothing to do but be fully present to yourself and the other. The rest will follow. We don't have to provide the answers. So often when one is approaching end of life, there can be a deep sense of isolation, loneliness. And by being present and listening, what we provide is companionship. And that possibly is the most needed. So thank you.
I'm going to share about cremations in Singapore, what happens during a sea burial, and the latest one is in Singapore, the latest option in Singapore is about the inland sea scattering. Okay, before I move on to the next slide, can I test you all, okay? How many crematoriums are there in Singapore for public use? 1, 2, 3, 5? Okay, there are 3 crematoriums for public use in Singapore. So there are 3, as I said, there are 3 crematoriums in Singapore. One is government managed, and the other 2 are private. Okay. So the government managed crematorium is Mandai Crematorium. This is Mandai Crematorium. Okay. So cremations here, for an adult, it will cost $100. For a child below 10, it will be $50. For the latest rates, you can refer to the NEA website, but this is what I got as of last week. Okay? I don't know if it includes GST or not. Okay. So for cremations before 12 noon, the cremated remains can be collected after 3 p.m. on the same day. If it is cremated after 12 p.m., the remains can be collected the following day. So the next of kin are tasked to ensure that the cremated remains are collected within 14 days of cremation. If they are not collected after 14 days, Mandai will arrange for messy burial for these ashes. Sorry. Cremation is allowed for all nationalities, but usage of the government-owned columbariums. Columbariums are where you store the ashes. That is only for Singaporeans or permanent residents, or for foreigners that have immediate next of kin that are Singaporeans and permanent residents. Likewise for burial for them in Singapore. Deceased who are foreigners and they don't have a next of kin who is a Singaporean or PR, they may store their ashes at the private columbariums such as temples and churches. So this one is the government-owned one. These are the private crematoriums and columbariums. It is the Guangmingshan Columbarium, Guangmingshan Monastery and the Qitongam Temple. These two are located in Xinmin. The prices roughly range from 327 to 436 for cremation, and then there's additional charges that will apply if you want to store the ashes in the columbariums in these temples. Has anybody here attended a sea burial before? Or watched on TV before? Okay. So what do you think it's like? Is it like this one? This one is not Salt Bay. This one is Ash Bay, okay? Do you think it's like this? Or do you think it's like this? Like this next one? I rather Salt Bay one than this one, huh? Okay, these are pictures from a cremation that we did for one of our destitute patients. We engaged a pro bono undertaker to do the cremation and the sea burial. So the ashes are collected and the undertakers will assist to place the bone fragments in place. So starting with the leg bones all the way up to the skull, exactly like how anybody else would have who has their ashes collected. And then it's tied in either a red cloth, it's for red cloth for Taoists or Buddhists, and white cloth for any other religion. Okay, a sea burial is also open for foreigners. Okay. So after the ashes, so the designated site for scattering these ashes is located, it has to be 1.5 nautical miles or is 2.8 kilometers south of Pulau Semakau. So it cannot be too near Singapore Island. Okay, so roughly where you get this is for the guys, right? Where the boat stops, you can see the gong. Okay, that's how we get our bearing, because it's really in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so the scattering can be done daily from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the undertakers will charter a boat and the loved ones can get onto the boat to participate in the sea burial. These boats will depart from Changi Ferry Terminal. This is the same jetty that you'll take to get out to the nearby islands of Pulau Ubin. Then if there are prayers, the religious ministers will go on also. I think the boat is limited to 10 people, including the undertaker and the religious leader, for safety reasons. Okay. So practicing of the scattering varies. Okay, some undertakers put it into a cloth, like what you see here. The whole cloth is released into the sea. Some of them will loosen up for us. So I have done both. One where you release the entire into the sea, or they will open up and then each one take a piece and drop in. And then some of them have this practice where the undertaker must be the last person to discard the rest of it, and from a certain side of the boat. So it also varies from undertaker to undertaker. Okay. Okay. Does anybody go scuba diving? If you see this in the sea, please don't pick it up. It is somebody's remains. Okay. So these are the newer ones. These are biodegradable urns. Okay. So it's more environmentally friendly. The previous one, the red cloth is not environmentally friendly at all. So you also see a lot of red cloth at the ocean bed. So these kind, you will see it will sink because you can notice there are holes. So the water will enter, it will sink very nicely down. So this is what it looks like when you first, like for example the turtle, you put it there, it will slowly sink in. So it's a very gentle sea burial. Okay, it is nothing like what you see in the shows at all. You go, what? No way. Okay, because the sea breeze will blow the ashes right back into your face onto the boat. Okay, you don't want to bring your family members back that way. Okay, so these are biodegradable urns. It's a new thing. Not all undertakers have it readily available, but it is also a bit more pricey. Okay, because if you do the sea burial, right, mainly you pay for the chartering of the boat. The cloth and all that cloth is cheap compared to this one. Okay. And then the latest method of remains management in Singapore is the inland ash scattering. So this has been up since 17 May 2021. Okay, this is known as inland ash scattering. Okay, the ashes must be grinded into a powder form. Okay, and it's scattered at an ash scattering facility at Choa Chu Kang Cemetery. This place is called Garden of Peace. Okay. Only cremated, so this one is also only for Singaporeans and permanent residents, and for foreigners whose immediate next of kin are Singaporeans or PR. This will cost $320. Okay, so I'll actually show you a video that will clearly explain what goes on now.
Welcome to Funeral Fridays with Harmony, and today we are at Garden of Peace at Choa Chu Kang. The government has recently introduced inland ash scattering, and it's the first ever in Singapore. And we are going to take a look at how it is done here in Singapore. Inland ash scattering is not a new concept. It has been adopted in other countries before, like Australia. So in Australia, what happens for their ash scattering is that they have individual small plots of land for the ashes to be scattered on the plot of land. However, as we will take a look in the following video, this is not really the same in Singapore. It's a little bit different. So Singapore has adopted this idea of inland ash scattering from other countries and adapted it for local use.
The process of inland ash scattering starts with the application of it online. During the ash collection at Mandai Crematorium, do let the staff there know that you are going for inland ash scattering, and they will help to pulverize the ashes into powder form. After the pulverized ashes are placed in the specialized canister, we will then head to Garden of Peace at Choa Chu Kang for the ash scattering.
At the entrance of Garden of Peace at Choa Chu Kang, we have a prayer facility. So this is the prayer facility. We are allowed to light joss sticks as well as candles. However, we're not allowed to burn paper products here. And it can be used by people of all religions as well. And the environment is also quite serene.
At Garden of Peace at Choa Chu Kang, there are 4 lanes for us to scatter the ashes. The lanes are lined with pebbles and are designed to allow ashes to naturally percolate into the soil underneath. There are also watering cans and water available for us to wash the ashes into the soil underneath. This prevents the wind from blowing the ashes away. After we are done scattering the ashes, we can then place the canister into a specialized bin for it.
If you are intending to come here by public transport, there's a bus directly outside the Garden of Peace at Choa Chu Kang, and you can take bus 405. If you are driving your own transport here, do remember that there's a car park B2, which is the nearest car park to the Garden of Peace. So if you are intending to drive your own transport, you have to locate car park B2 and then park your car there. If you found this information about inland ash scattering useful, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe, and look forward towards our next Funeral Fridays video. Thank you!
Okay, we can turn on the lights already. Okay, maybe we can share, because Joyce and I, we serve Assisi Hospice patients. So give us some time to share with you what we do, some of the practices that we do here for patients in Assisi Hospice. So, because you know, we are a Catholic hospice, but we don't serve majority Catholic or Christian patients, right? You saw, right, Buddhists, right? So, for these patients, we actually allow family members to bring in whatever items they feel comfortable with, what brings them comfort, except for joss sticks. No burning candles also, no, don't bring in talisman and burn also, and anything that needs an electrical source. Okay, that is for all healthcare, right? So now here we also offer, our clinical pastoral care colleagues have posters like these, where there's the poster of the Divine Mercy or Guan Yin. We have others like, for Muslims, we have the one that is the Holy of Holies. There's also a poster of Buddha, but we only have these 2 for now because the rest are used by the patients now. Okay. Then, like I shared just now, we have these different players, like this one is the Buddhist one. We have there are also audio Bibles, because like Joyce said just now, it is very comforting to hear scriptures being read and all that. So this kind of items, it would. So this is reading from the Bible. Okay. Then it has Chinese, English, you can skip whichever scriptures you want also. So there's English, there's Chinese, there is also players for Muslims. You can easily search for this on Shopee and all that. Okay. For the Catholic patients, we also have rosaries that have been blessed, and we give this to them. Right? Okay. And for some patients also, it helps ground them to hold on to something. So this is called a holding cross. Okay, and okay. Later you all can come up to the table here and take a look also. Okay, so this is for patients to hold, and because if they can't pray, they hold, and this brings them great comfort to them also, right? Because the rosary, you need to have some dexterity in your fingers. This one is easy for them to use. Okay. And then in Assisi Hospice also, even after a patient passes on, the cultural and the spiritual support doesn't really stop. So in Assisi Hospice, for patients that have passed away, we actually have what we call interfaith memorial service, where we invite family members of the patients that have passed away, maybe roughly like in about the last 3 to 6 months, we invite them back to Assisi Hospice, and we invite religious leaders from 5 religions, and they do a prayer for them, for all of them, whether the family members turn up or not. So we have Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Taoist, and a Christian or Catholic priest or pastor. Okay, so they will pray. And then family members are invited to light a candle in remembrance. So one more thing, culturally, spiritually, being appropriate, Muslims are not allowed to light candles. Okay, so we will tell them also, if they want, we will let them do, but we will tell them there's this candle lighting, don't do it if you want, it's okay. Then after the candle lighting, we give them a rose of remembrance. So we actually had interfaith memorial service this week. So these are roses from the service that we'll give one to each family member. Okay. And even after the patient passes leaves the room, our clinical pastoral care colleague will do a blessing for the room also. Joyce, would you like to explain this part?
So very quickly, for inpatients that we've cared for, sorry, I must put this. For inpatients we cared for, so when the room is clean, we have a little time of remembrance. We call it the 5 moments of care. We actually open up the windows, lit a candle. We invite the staff who've cared for the patients to come in, and we have a moment of silence, remembering the patients, a little prayer, and also for any of the staff, if they didn't get a chance to say farewell, because some of them may be off shift, they come and share their bit and bid their farewell. So and we do that with every patient before we admit new patients. Okay, so it's okay. We'll just end up with this. Oh, okay. We'll now have Q&A before we close up, okay? So any questions, like Alexandra said, we only cover the major religion, yeah. And maybe some of you have other experiences. And as mentioned, Singapore is one of the most religiously diverse country in the world. So these are just, we try to compact them, but actually there's a lot of overlap in the different practices. So anyone would have any questions? Or even any comments or shared experiences? Yes. Yes. I will have this too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I found the session really fascinating and very sensitive to the multicultural, religious context of Singapore. I'm just wondering, because an advice was given to me after my husband has passed away, which is that after the person has passed away, do you encourage family members to stay with the body, with the person while it's being clean? Which I wish I had done, but it wasn't told to me that I could do that. I was told to leave the room by the nurses, but it wasn't in this particular hospital, but in hospital. So I'm just wondering, that would be, based on what was shared yesterday, that would be really very nice to see the cleaning before it's being moved to the, I'm not sure where it's moved, but to where the funeral company would then take.
So this is called last office.
That's right. I thought that would be a really nice gesture, which I didn't know.
I can't speak for other organizations, but in Assisi Hospice we allow, and it is also because we see it as a form of closure also. Especially for family members that have been caring all the while, I'm not going to put a stop immediately, I'm going to let you continue. So in Assisi Hospice, if the family requests that they want to be part of the last office, they can do it together with our nurses.
Okay,
Elders will guide them a lot on how to do it.
Yeah, I thought that would be a very, very nice moment and gesture, which are great to be at Far East, even in the public hospitals, because we are told to leave the room. The nurses will do it, and we are ushered out of the room. Yeah. So just wondering.
Thank you.
We will suggest, ask the family members to ask, can I participate in the last office?
We just assume it cannot be done.
Yeah. I think
It was a nice gesture.
yeah.
Now more healthcare are more aware. They might be more open to letting family members get involved in the last office.
So I think in Assisi Hospice, we are still on a learning journey. So a lot of things that we have learned, even from our patients ourselves, and we learn to be a little bit more sensitive and hopefully a little bit better in our care as time goes on. So the things are also still developing on our end. Yeah, okay, question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, for someone who is an atheist or non-believer, how does the family dispose of the body at burial or cremation? I'm curious because I'm a retired religious professional, and I often wonder what would I do if I were asked to dispose of the body of someone who has no religion. So even if a patient, no family, and they ask Assisi, he asks Assisi to deal with the disposal, how would you handle it?
From our experience with patients and, like for example, patients that have no NOK, the social workers are the ones who help out. So from what I observe, so there's no usual the prayers, the songs and all that, but so usually, like for example at Mandai, before the cremation there's a service hall, where usually prayers and all that are held. So I've noticed for those that are free thinkers, some family members and friends, they go down there, they talk about the patient, good memories, eulogies and all that they have done. So I've had some of them sing the deceased favorite song. So it doesn't, funerals don't need to have a religious connotation attached to it.
Just to add to that, and this may not always be possible because sometimes when the patients come to us, they're already too ill, but if they're able to, that's when actually conversations to have with them before they passed, and they may have certain wishes. Some may even say, we've encountered free thinkers who say, somehow we do the Christian one, more peaceful, or the Buddhist one, less fast. So that we know.
Catholics, they say, 8 hours no touch.
Yeah, we had, yeah.
Okay, whatever you want.
So Sandra and I work together, so we experienced quite a mixture of everything. Yes, yeah.
If an unbeliever asks for a Catholic disposal, would you do it?
Okay, we have a Catholic priest here who may actually be better at this. I'm so sorry to us. Father Les, there's a question from a gentleman. If a non-believer asks for a Catholic, what did you say, Catholic?
Disposal.
Disposal. So the specific is Catholic disposal. Can that be done? Oh, I'm so grateful Father Leslie is here.
I'll give an example. Once I was asked to, the family knew me very well. I'm a Roman Catholic priest. So this person who passed away, pretty no religion. He loved Shakespeare. Shakespeare was everything for him. So because the family invited me to say some prayers, and of course I go in there. I wear my cassock and the stole respectfully. The family majority are Christians, Catholics of it. I have to say some prayers, remembering the deceased and asking God to look after those who mourn. Simple prayers, and there are kind of bidding prayers that people can say as well to join in the prayer, and then a simple blessing for everyone that is gathered. Okay? But to be very sensitive not to use those who have Catholic overtones. They mentioning sacrament, baptism, etc. So that was that. Okay? And before the coffin was closed, their kind of departure for the loved one was to put a very huge book of Shakespeare's plays into the coffin. Okay? Shakespeare's plays into the coffin. And then
Okay. Thank you so much for the questions. I think we all, can we take one final? Okay, we'll take one final question. Okay, thank you.
Next question. Yeah, this is the first time I hear about the Dharma Pill. I'm wondering, would you be willing to share a little bit more about the Dharma Pill? What's the purpose? What is it made of? Where do you get the Dharma Pill?
My experience with I have had 2 experiences with Dharma pills, but this is brought in by the family members. What I heard from them was that it was from Tibet. It was from a priest in Tibet. The Dharma pill is made of herbs. Because we asked, because it's considered alternative medicine here, we wanted to know if there was any interaction. But they say it's mainly all herbs. It's a black color, dark green pill. So, and it really smells very like TCM. And it's quite hard, it's not something that breaks easily.
Because you mentioned there's this risk of choking, right?
Because I held it, so it doesn't disintegrate easily. So it will take a lot of saliva and all that to break. And then once it breaks, it really hurts, like it breaks apart.
So it's only from Nepal, Singapore,
Tibet.
Oh, Tibet. Alright, thank you.
So far, the 2 that I encountered, I heard is from Tibet. Any more questions?
Hi, Vanessa. Sorry, I know we're running out of time. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm wondering, like, based on your experiences, what is the kindest way maybe to approach someone who may have been very religious in their life, but as they go through like mental decline, physical decline, they start to get a bit confused or conflicted on their beliefs, especially if their family members who are very assertive towards like the family faith and all. Like, you know, as a volunteer or caregiver, how best can we like show up for that?
So you asked the kindest way. Is that your question? What's the kindest way?
In a sense where it's like, you know, you want to value what the person believes, but they are in a buried state.
Yeah. I mean, it's always to recognize that it is the disease that caused them to be in their present state, you know, and as you mentioned earlier, they brought with them the richness of their faith. That's still a part of them. So the last slide that I showed on being present, attending to where they are, I find that the most helpful, and also modeling that for the family members, because, you know, they are in that state because of their disease, okay? And you're right, sometimes in my work, we do have family who are concerned, you know, are they losing their faith, you know, because they used to be so religious and then faithful, and now they are, you know. And this is when the medical team coming in, the doctors, helping to explain to the family members that this is their illness that's causing them to be like that. And the part that we play is a modeling kindness, calmness, you know, being there present with the patient. I mean, in Assisi Hospice, we also support the family members, you know, and bringing them all together. And generally, with time, and sometimes for family members, they would also request for religious ministers to come. And if the medical team are not able to assure them, sometimes having a priest to come or the monk to come, and with the experiences, and also to assure them, maybe the additional prayer for the family to allay their fears. You know, and also as we attend to the patient, yes, we attend with kindness to recognize the person they are, and not because who they've become due to their illness. Okay.
I think the most kindest way we can do is not to be judgmental to them. Okay. And we are not there. We are there to support them. We are there to provide our presence. We are not there to provide answers or to force them to give us an answer. You can plant questions and let them think about it.
Okay, thank you very much to Sandra and Joyce for the very insightful and interesting sharing.
One last pointer to end on.
Okay, go ahead.
We thought this may be helpful. I'm just reading this out, okay? When someone dies, the first thing to do is nothing. Don't run out and call the nurse. Don't pick up the phone. Take a deep breath and be present to the magnitude of the moment. There's a grace to being at the bedside of someone you love as they make the transition out of this world, at the moment they take their last breath. There's an incredible sacredness in the space. Sit at the bedside and just be present to the experience in the room. What's happening for you? What might be happening for them? What other presences are here that might be supporting them on their way? Tune into all the beauty and magic. Pausing gives your soul a chance to adjust, because no matter how prepared we are, a death is still a shock. Being present in the moments after death is an incredible gift to yourself. It's a gift to the people you're with, and it's a gift to the person who's just died. They're just a hair's breadth away. They're just starting their new journey in the world without a body. If you keep a calm space around the body and in the room, they're launched into a more beautiful way. It's a service to both sides of the veil. Thank you for your kind attention.